And now it's time for another Dice Tower review with Mike Vincent.
Hello, Michael Vincent here, and today I'm doing an educational review of a game called 1775 Rebellion by Academy Games. So this game, 1775, the events that will spark and kick off the American Revolution, a very significant event in North American and world history. And so this game is going to be a light military game / area control game. It's very streamlined, easy to get into, and will have some really interesting historical nuggets for those who are interested in this time period. Now, given that this is an educational review, again, I will not be looking at this game in depth in terms of its mechanics, but looking at would a historian, would a student in a classroom, would a parent want to buy this for their son or daughter, or would a history buff find this game interesting will be the focus. Now, I am hoping to get my videos to be a little shorter. They've been a bit long, so I've decided to cut out an in-depth look at the components, because I feel like looking at components is maybe not as relevant if we're just looking at the educational value of the game. So do keep in mind, I'm going to try and keep this video a little shorter, and as a result, I will not do an in-depth assessment of the components. However, in a word, the components for this game are fantastic. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at 1775 Rebellion. Okay, so here you see the rather large board for 1775 Rebellion, I can barely even fit it on my table for gaming in my office, but that's okay, you definitely get the sense. So 1775 is a game designed by Bo Beckett and Jeff Stahl, and as I mentioned, you are playing out the events of the American Revolution. So one side is going to play the Loyalist militia, and the British regulars, and the other side is going to be playing the Patriot militia and the Continental Army. So each side is represented by colored cubes. Now there's also Native Americans, which is represented by the green cubes. There is the French, who are represented by purple cubes, and there's going to be German Hessians, also controlled by orange cubes. So there's different factions, and this game can be played between 2 and 4 players. So in a 2-player game, one side is going to control the British and her allies, and the other side is going to control the American Patriotic Forces, and if you're playing a 4-player game, then it's going to split into smaller factions, and you're going to play in 2 teams, 2 against 2. So we see here on the board the original 13 colonies, as well as the relevant provinces for Canada. The game is essentially, you are trying to control as many regions as possible. So in order to win, you want to control as many whole states as possible. So I want to control Virginia or North Carolina or Delaware, and at the end of the game, whoever controls the most regions wins. Now, the way you decide when the game is going to end is you're going to have truce cards. So each player is going to have a deck of cards, and you're going to have movement cards, which will allow you to form and move armies a certain amount of spaces, and you're going to have here a truce card. So once a truce card is played, there's going to be 1 truce in each deck for 4 decks. So once one side has played both of their truce cards, that will end it for them, and if all the truce cards have been played, that will finish it. So there's a round tracker, and every time after round 3, at the end of the round, you're going to check to see if someone has been able to win. So in the first 2 rounds, you were not going to win. However, at the end of round 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, once the truce cards hit the table, then there's the potential for the game to end. So you need to move your armies to the relevant territories, and you're going to roll dice, and the dice will determine whether you have a hit, whether you will force your enemy to flee, or whether you will be able to make a strategic movement into another territory or retreat if you need to. So basically the game is very simple, very streamlined, plays very quickly, and was very easy to learn. This is something I really appreciate about Academy Games, is that they're very good at just giving you very simple instructions. The gameplay is always very streamlined and easy to learn, and me and my wife were able to pick this up and start playing it very quickly. So it's very cool that you can form an army. Let's say I want to move my army 2 spaces, 1, 2. So I could move my army, and then we would simply roll the dice, which matches the amount of cubes, obviously to a maximum amount of dice, and we would roll to see what happens. And essentially, that is the gameplay. So normally I do a separate section, one for theme and one for educational value. However, I feel in this case, Academy Games does such a good job of intermingling the theme and making it educational that I can almost talk about the theme and the educational value at the same time. So that's what I'm going to do. So obviously this board is beautiful and does a really good job of showing the geography of the 13 colonies and the relevant provinces of Canada. So one mechanic they've included in this game that both conveys theme and helps educate is the role of the Native Americans. So the Native Americans get their own territories and they're represented by green cubes. And it's interesting in this game in that the Native Americans, just like in history, they were very torn between whether they should side with the British or the Americans, will function similarly in the game. So if I move my forces and I'm playing the Americans, I can then have these Native American forces join my army and they can attack the British together. However, if the British forces happen to get there first, then they can control the Native American forces and use them against the Americans. And of course, if two armies are going to face off, if you're going to have a British army taking on an American army, well, then the Native Americans will not fight each other. So if we have three Native American cubes on the American side and 2 Native American cubes on the British side, you will have to cancel out 2 for this side, 2 for this side, and the Americans will then have 1 Native American cube to help fight on their side. So I think Academy Games should be applauded for doing a very nice job here, trying to weave some extra flavor into the way the cubes function, and also interweaving some theme and educational elements as well. Another great thing about Academy Games games is that they always have a nice write-up in their rules booklet giving you the historical background, the outcomes, and also highlighting many of the important events, characters, and dates to just help both boost the theme for people who are just playing the game for fun, and also providing a lot of education. This was an excellent synopsis, going back to some of the earlier details, looking at the Stamp Act and the Boston Tea Party, all the way through looking at the events both from the American perspective and from the Native American and Canadian perspective. So as you can see, there's very nice graphics and we have a nice synopsis, but the synopsis is also quite detailed and has a lot of good information. So they have sections on the Native Americans, on the United Empire Loyalists, and really I was very impressed with just how well they were able to capture a lot of the important details and the important events, but in a way that was easy to digest and easy to follow. In my opinion, this almost does a better job than the textbook that I use in my classroom. So I think as an educational tool and as a way to really boost theme and make it feel like those cubes you're moving around on the board mean something, is this really nice trend they have of including this historical synopsis and overview in their rule books. So 2 thumbs up for this inclusion, as I found it was really well written, and credit to Brandon Good, who actually wrote the historical overview in this case, as I think it was brilliantly done. So the other way that 1775 really integrates a lot of their theme and learning is through the event cards. So each player is going to have a deck of cards, and each deck of cards, in addition to having gameplay mechanics and ways you can play to give your side advantages, between the art and the historical writing at the bottom really helps you feel like what you're doing and how it ties into historical events. So as opposed to just place 3 cubes here or move this army there, it gives you the historical context for how the card functions mechanically, and I find Academy Games does a really good job of marrying the historical event or person that it's trying to emulate, and then having that also really make sense in terms of game mechanics, and it really just adds a lot of flavor. It makes it feel like what you're doing makes sense in the context of what you're doing. So I really think these cards were very well done, adds a lot of flavor, and makes it so that if you're replaying the game, you can play as different factions, and it's going to, from a gameplay perspective, be fresh because different cards are going to do different things, but you're also going to learn about the faction that you are playing in more detail. So this really adds to replay value as well. So if you are interested in this time period, if you are a teacher and you teach the American Revolution, if you are a parent and you have a student who's learning this in school and maybe they're interested in this historical time period, then I highly recommend 1775 Rebellion. This game is really easy to get into. It's accessible. My wife does not like military games, but she did enjoy playing this game. I think because it wasn't too intimidating, it was fairly light, and she was able to learn how to play and I think she really appreciated the history as well. It's really cool how just by playing the game, by looking at the map, using the cards, and if you take a little bit of extra effort to look through the instruction booklet, you're going to absorb lots of interesting things about the American Revolution. So this is an important historical event, obviously both in North America and the world. As a Canadian, it's cool to have another tool to try and get students interested in an American historical event. Obviously, if you're in the United States, then the American Revolution is going to be a really important part of any American history course. And so I really think this is a really good way to get students engaged. And again, I think because the mechanics are so smooth and the gameplay is so streamlined, that this is going to make it very accessible to many players. I have other students who've picked up other games, maybe something like Civilization, where unless they're hardcore gamers, they're going to be a bit put off by how complex it is. But because 1775 is so streamlined and accessible, it really makes it easier for people to get in and therefore start to absorb some of the interesting information about the American Revolution. So as a teacher, I very much plan to use this in my classroom, and I highly recommend if you are, as part of a school, maybe getting this for your game club or using this in a classroom if you teach this subject. So 2 thumbs up. I think 1775 is a really good game, really fun, and it's also marries the theme and definitely educates at the same time. So thanks very much for watching, and hopefully I'll have another review coming up fairly soon. Have a good one.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.